All right, today we're going to unravel a pretty wild medical mystery, one that connects ancient Roman parties all the way to modern ICUs. And it all kicks off with a feeling that I'm betting most of us have had.
You know what I'm talking about, right? You wake up and your arm is just gone. It's that tingly pins and needles panic where it feels like a dead weight that isn't even yours. For most of us, thankfully, it's just a weird, scary few minutes.
But imagine if that feeling didn't go away. For some people, it doesn't. They wake up with something called wrist drop. And I mean, they literally cannot lift their hand up. And this thing has a fantastic name, Saturday Night Palsy.
So what's actually going on here? What's happening in the body? Let's dive into a modern case to figure it out.
Okay, so this is a textbook example, right out of the medical journals. Picture this, a 53-year-old guy. He's out, has a good time, maybe falls asleep on a bar stool, with his arm just draped over the back. He wakes up 6 hours later and nothing. His hand is totally, completely limp.
So what happened? Well, he basically compressed his radial nerve. That's the nerve that controls the muscles that let you lift your wrist and fingers. The fancy medical term is neuropraxia, but really it's just a temporary nerve block. The power cable analogy is honestly perfect. It's like you've pinched the cable, and the signal from your brain just can't get through to your hand.
Okay, but here is where this whole story takes a really fascinating twist. Because this problem, which sounds super modern, right? Falling asleep in a weird position, it actually has a much older and honestly a much darker history. And we start seeing clues pop up in history. For example, way back in the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin himself noticed this exact same wrist drop in tradesmen who were working with lead, and he gave it this amazing name, the Dangles. But this story doesn't even start with Ben Franklin. It's not an 18th century thing. To find the real origin, yeah, we have to go way back. We're talking almost 2,000 years.
And when you look, the historical breadcrumbs are just amazing. Think about this. All the way back in the 1st century AD, a Roman doctor named Dioscorides actually described wrist drop and connected it to lead poisoning. Fast forward, Franklin gives it the Dangles, and then by the 19th century, it gets its modern name Saturday Night Palsy, linking it straight to partying on the weekend. What a time!
So why the Romans? Well, their entire world was basically saturated with lead. They called it plumbum. Sound familiar? It was everywhere. It lined their aqueducts, they stored wine in lead barrels, and they even used lead acetate, get this, as a sweetener for unripe wine. So you can imagine during these massive festivals like Saturnalia, which was basically a week-long rager, they were just chugging this lead-laced wine. The condition they got from it was even named after the festival, Saturnism.
Okay, so this brings up a huge question, right? How on earth can a pinched nerve, a physical problem, and lead poisoning, a chemical problem, cause the exact same, really specific symptom? The answer is pretty incredible, and it takes us down to the molecular level.
I mean, just look at this. On one hand, you've got a mechanical compression, a physical block. On the other, you've got a chemical toxin. Totally different causes. And yet, they both lead to the exact same weird paralysis. How?
Well, the culprit, the thing that connects them both, is a tiny little engine factory inside ourselves called the heme synthesis pathway. Just think of it like an assembly line for making a crucial part our body needs for energy. And what does lead do? It's literally like throwing sand into the gears of that factory. It just grinds the whole thing to a halt.
So this is that assembly line. It's the biological blueprint for making something called heme, which is absolutely vital for producing energy in our cells. Now don't worry about memorizing all these steps. The important part is right here. See those red arrows? That's exactly where lead comes in and just completely sabotages the whole production line. And when that happens, you get a massive energy failure, especially in your longest cells like your nerves. And get this, the way lead poisons this system is so specific that it perfectly mimics a rare genetic disorder called acute porphyria. Why? Because that genetic disorder breaks the exact same factory, just for a different reason. The result is an almost identical set of symptoms: abdominal pain, neuropsychiatric issues, and yep, you guessed it, that signature wrist drop.
But believe it or not, the story doesn't end there. Back in ancient Rome, this whole thing has a surprisingly modern final chapter that brings us right up to today.
Now, for your typical run-of-the-mill Saturday night palsy caused by compression, the news is actually really good. About 70% of people make a full recovery with just some physical therapy and time.
But a few years ago,
doctors started noticing a spike in this condition. This old palsy was showing up again and again, and it had nothing to do with falling asleep at a party. The causes were brand new.
So what was the source? The COVID-19 pandemic. You had patients with severe cases in the ICU who had to be put in a prone position, lying on their stomach, for a very long time, and that was compressing the nerve. On top of that, there's even talk about the virus itself potentially affecting the nerves. And in a few very rare cases, swollen lymph nodes after vaccination could also press on that same radial nerve.
I mean, it's just a stunning connection when you think about it. The exact same distinct wrist drop, the one seen in Romans poisoned by lead, the one Benjamin Franklin called the Dangles, was now showing up in patients battling a 21st century pandemic.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? From Roman feasts all the way to modern ICUs, this one peculiar symptom, the Dangles, has woven its way through 2,000 years of history. It just makes you wonder, what other medical histories are repeating themselves right now, hiding in plain sight?